So you've probably heard of The Great Gatsby, right? But what makes it such a timeless classic? Well, a huge part of the magic is right there in the very first chapter. Today, we're going to jump into how F. Scott Fitzgerald sets the stage for this incredible world of, glittering parties, deep, dark secrets, and of course, the mystery man himself, Jay Gatsby. Let's get into it.
Okay, so first things first, we've got to meet our narrator, this guy named Nick Carraway. He's a young fella from the Midwest, and the very first thing he shares with us isn't even about him. It's this piece of advice his father gave him. And believe me, this one little lesson, it shapes how we see everything in the entire story.
I mean, think about that for a second. His dad tells him to remember that not everyone has had the same advantages he's had. And Nick says this totally shaped him. It made him someone who's, and I quote, inclined to reserve all judgments. This basically turns him into the perfect person for people to tell their secrets to. He's positioning himself as a reliable, totally objective guide through this whole crazy story.
But, and this is a big but, just as soon as he sets himself up as this open-minded guy, he kind of pulls the rug out from under us. He admits that after the summer we're about to hear about, he ran out of patience. His tolerance for what he calls the privileged glimpses into the human heart was completely gone. So you have to ask, right? What on earth could have happened to push our supposedly non-judgmental narrator right to his breaking point? And here's where it gets really interesting. He says only one person was exempt from his disgust. Gatsby, the guy the book is named after. But then he says Gatsby represented everything he scorns. I mean, talk about a contradiction. He's disgusted with everyone's behavior, but the one guy he gives a pass to is the one who should, in theory, be the worst of them all. This is the huge question the book throws at us right from the get-go. What is it about this Gatsby guy? Okay, so let's talk setting. Nick decides to move east. He's trying to get away from what he calls the ragged edge of the universe back home in the Midwest. And he lands in New York to get into the bond business. And you're going to see that where he ends up living isn't just a detail. It is absolutely central to this whole story. So picture this. Fitzgerald uses the actual landscape to tell the story. Nick ends up on Long Island, on one of two pieces of land that he says look like giant eggs. They look almost exactly the same, right next to each other, separated by a little bay. But when it comes to the people who live there, they are worlds apart. And this is where the main social clash of the novel is laid bare. You've got West Egg versus East Egg. Nick rents this tiny little bungalow in West Egg, which is considered less fashionable. This is where the new money lives, people who made their fortunes recently and aren't afraid to show it off. And guess who his next-door neighbor is? Yup, Gatsby, in this absolutely enormous mansion. Then, just across the water, you have East Egg. That's the super fashionable, exclusive home of the old money, the established, aristocratic families living in these huge, graceful white palaces. So the plot really gets moving when Nick drives over to the fancy side, to East Egg, for dinner. He's going to see his second cousin, a woman named Daisy Buchanan, and her husband, Tom, who he actually knew from his college days. And we meet Tom first. Let me tell you, Nick's description makes him sound, well, intimidating. This guy has it all. He's super rich. He was a huge football star in college. But you get the sense his glory days are way behind him. He's got this arrogant, supercilious manner about him. And Nick's final take? He just says Tom has a cruel body. Yikes. That tells you a lot right there. Yeah, we don't have to wonder about Tom's character for very long. Right in the middle of dinner, he just explodes with this awful racist rant about some book he's been reading. It's pretty shocking, and it shows you exactly who he is underneath all that money and fancy education. Just a brutish, prejudiced guy. And then we have Daisy. Nick describes her as just completely captivating. Apparently, her voice is this unforgettable, thrilling sound that just draws you in. But right away, even as he's charmed, Nick senses something else. There's a sadness behind her sad and lovely face, a feeling that maybe, just maybe, all this charm is a bit of an act. And one of the very first things she says to Nick is this: I'm paralyzed with happiness. It's so perfectly her. It's over the top, it's charming. But is it real? That little stutter, the whole theatrical way she says it immediately makes you wonder what's genuine and what's a performance.
So, as you can probably guess, it doesn't take very long for the cracks in this perfect, shiny world to start showing. They're in this gorgeous house, the conversation is all light and breezy, but you can just feel the tension bubbling right under the surface. Then, right in the middle of dinner, the phone rings. Tom gets up to take it, and just from the way he and Daisy react, it is so obvious that this is not a call he wants to be getting. And then it rings again. And now the tension in the room is just, wow, you could cut it with a knife. So while Tom and Daisy are having this tense conversation inside, the other guests at the table, disc golfer named Jordan Baker, she just leans over to Nick and spills the beans. Completely casual. She just drops this bombshell. Tom's got some woman in New York. So yeah, that's Tom's mistress on the phone. And apparently this is not a secret at all.
And this is what's so wild about their world. Daisy comes back to the table with this tense gaiety. She's acting like everything is just peachy, launching into this totally random cheerful story. It perfectly shows you the unspoken rule they all live by. We all know the ugly truth, but we will absolutely pretend we don't.
Later on, when she gets a moment alone with Nick, Daisy finally lets the act drop, and she reveals this incredibly sad, cynical side to her. She tells him that when her little girl was born, she actually cried. And she said she hoped her daughter would grow up to be a fool, a beautiful little fool. Because in her world, she thinks that's the only way a woman can ever really be happy, just to be beautiful and blissfully ignorant. It's heartbreaking, really. So Nick leaves that dinner party feeling, as he puts it, confused and a little disgusted. And who can blame him, right? He just saw all the hypocrisy and misery hiding behind all that money. But when he gets back home to West Egg, the chapter isn't quite over. There's one last, really iconic mystery waiting for him. He's just sitting outside by himself in the dark, and then he realizes he's not actually alone. He sees a figure stepping out of the shadows from the giant mansion next door. It's him. It's his neighbor, Mr. Gatsby. And there he is. This is our very first look at the famous Gatsby. And it's not what you'd expect, right? He's not throwing a massive party. He's just a silhouette, standing by himself, totally content to just be alone, looking up at the stars. Nick thinks about shouting out, to introduce himself, but then he stops because Gatsby does something really odd. He reaches his arms out toward the water across the bay, and it's not just a casual stretch. Nick says it's with such intensity that he could have sworn the guy was trembling. It's a gesture just filled with this incredible longing. I mean, what a powerful image, right? You have this mysterious, super rich guy all alone on his perfect lawn, literally trembling as he reaches out for what? Something in the dark that we can't see. What could possibly make someone feel that strongly? So Nick follows his gaze, looking out across the dark water to see what's there. And he can't make out anything except for a single tiny green light way off in the distance at the end of a dock. And when he turns back to look at Gatsby, he's gone, vanished back into the dark. And with that one unforgettable image, the whole mystery of the novel is set up. What is that green light, and why is Gatsby reaching for it?